Was that for intro? No. He's been doing more for sustainability than most people. He's been behind most of the documents that are signed by nations on this planet that comes to sustainability. Please let me present Dr. Mahendra Shah.
Thank you very much. Well, let me begin by saying that as I look around, obviously everybody is under 35. So you are the beautiful people, beautiful in mind, beautiful in body, and beautiful in soul. And that is what we need to change this world. He just talked about Greta. Last week in Davos, the United States economic representative said that Greta should go to the College of Economics and learn economics, because zero emissions will result in losses of jobs. And our priority in the United States is to keep jobs. So I've written a little piece that I will be publishing shortly, that he's right. But all the people who have been to all the colleges and universities need to go to the school of life, because they don't know what is the school of life. Is saving jobs better than saving lives? So where is our priority? Now, we kept this slide on for a few minutes, because if you think about this thing from Mahatma Gandhi, almost 50 years ago, and ask yourself the question, which of these principles are still in practice? Then you will find none when you look at the way the world is going. And we always talk about environmental problems, environmental sustainability. Right now we are in the middle of a health crisis that is going to be the norm going into the future, because also we have no more antibiotics coming online. So this is the background against which I want to make this presentation. The quest for sustainability, the quest is by human beings, and Earth Odyssey is taking a step forward into what can we do, because at the moment there is no action anywhere, it's talk. And I have been part of that 50-year journey, and so mine is a 50-year journey from 1970 to now, and it continues. My heritage is, my parents are from India, so I have Indian heritage. I'm born in Kenya, so I have African upbringing. My education was in England, so I have European education. My employment for over 30 years has been international, living in 16 countries around the world. So by definition, I'm an international citizen. But there is no such thing in this world of today as an international citizen. We are becoming more and more nationalistic. Globalization is being destroyed, and which is fine. In terms of economics, it may make sense. But remember, pests and diseases, air pollution, climate change doesn't recognize any geographical boundary or any political boundary. So this is one earth, one world. And the nations had to come together. It's no point one country saying there is no climate change, and another country could stand up at the same time, so we'll burn the coal. Or Brazil could say, we will clear the Amazon. We need to develop, like the rest of the world developed. We should be paying for the forest of Brazil, because that's the climate carbon filter for the world. It's our oxygen source. So I started my career. I was teaching at Cambridge after finishing my education there. And my father said that you've been away 8 years, please come home for 4 weeks holiday. So I said, okay. I was already a tutor at Cambridge, so I went home. And after 2 weeks, my father said, you look pretty bored here. Why don't you go and help the university? So I went to the university, thinking I'd do a couple of days and see if I can give a talk or two. And 6 years later, I was still there. So I resigned from Cambridge and stayed in Nairobi to work on rural development and a number of other areas. In 1976, I met a professor from Georgia, Professor Salukwati at MIT, where I had given a talk. And he said, why don't you visit my institute in Vienna in the summer, next summer. Anyway, in between, unfortunately, Professor Salukwati died, and I ended up in this institute not knowing anywhere and not knowing why I'm there. So I visited all the departments, and there was a Hungarian finance minister who asked me to help with the food sector, at least with African knowledge, which I had. So I stayed there until '83, and we developed the agroecological zone methodology, which has mapped out every 5,000 hectares of all land on Earth and worked out what is the food production potential if we ever had to use all this land, including developing and developed countries. It took 5,000 person years to do this work, and we prepared the final report. I was one of those authors of that. It also included what is the impact of climate change on the food sector. How will agriculture yields be affected by climate change? How will agricultural land, because arable land will be lost because of temperature and because of rainfall. So that's a very famous ecological study. Then in 1983, I received a telephone call from New York that they were concerned about the famine across Africa. And in '84, I was appointed as director of that office, and I ended up in New York for the next 2 years, preparing the emergency report, which basically quantified how much do we need this week, what kind of aid, what has been delivered, and where is the gap. So over 2 years, we delivered $5.5 billion of aid. At that time, Bob Geldof contacted us, and this was the time Band-Aid came on board and USA for Africa. Both of these were organizations that Geldof raised $100 million himself, but it triggered the public of the world to give. And I remember in that office receiving letters from 6-year-old children from Lagos, from Tokyo, from Sweden, from Stockholm. And these children had written on the envelope to the United Nations Office of Africa in New York. And in these letters, there was a little letter saying, I didn't finish my rice yesterday. This rice is for the children. So it was a very amazing time. But we saved 5.5 million people from death. We lost 1 million at the same time. So I stayed in New York until '86 when the emergency was over. And in 1987, I joined the United Nations Office for Afghanistan when the Russians were leaving. I was appointed as director of rehabilitation of Afghanistan because everything was destroyed. And there were 7 million Afghans in Iran and in Pakistan. And we needed to repatriate, but they wouldn't be repatriated if there was no development. So we drew up an elegant plan. Unfortunately, the Mujahideen started to fight with each other, and the nations of the world with armaments all wanted a business there. And the whole thing collapsed, and Afghanistan to this day is as it's been for centuries. But no one has won in Afghanistan. The Ottoman Empire was defeated, the British were defeated, the Russians were defeated. No matter how mighty you are, you cannot win in Afghanistan. So that took me to 1981. My career was, I never wanted to stay in a high-level position in the United Nations, which at every step they offered me, because I was not interested in a bureaucratic appointment. So in '91, I received another call from a man called Maurice Strong, a very famous Canadian, who was the founder of Davos. He's the founder of Petro-Canada. He's founder of CEDA, first Director General of the United Nations Environment Program. So he called me and he said, we need you at the Earth Summit. So from 91 to 93, I worked partly in Rio de Janeiro, partly in Geneva, and partly in New York. And I had the honor to write a summary of 10,000 pages, which had been negotiated over the previous 3 years around the world, which was the final text going into Rio. And my assignment was, we need 100 pages and don't lose a point. So anyway, we managed to do it. So it was a great honor to write Agenda 21. Following this, in 1997, again, I received a call from the president of the World Bank saying we have a big crisis because Monsanto and all these people are doing intellectual property rights. And we don't know what's going to happen. Now, there's a system called CGIAR, Consultative Group on International Agriculture Research. There are 16 centers around the world, and they hold the seed of every food crop that exists in the world. So, for example, potatoes is in Lima in Peru. Maize and barley and sorghum is in Mexico in an organization called CIMIT. They always have one bank of seeds from all countries stored there, and a copy of that seed bank underground. So if there's an earthquake or a fire, we don't lose the seed. And the seeds are very important because if you have war in Angola and all of Angola is destroyed, Angola can still pick up a telephone and say, we need the seeds for Angola. Because every seed is adapted to the ecology. It grows best in that condition. So I spent 97 to 2000, we wrote a book called Food in the 21st Century, From Science to Sustainable Agriculture. That's a World Bank book. 2001, I returned to my old institute in Vienna, International Institute of Applied Systems Analysis. And in 2002, at the Johannesburg Summit, I presented the climate change impact on agriculture worldwide and what will it mean to the food situation. It also meant during this time that in 2008 we were commissioned by OPEC to prepare a report on food security and biofuels. Now, of course, the whole world was angry that OPEC has no business talking about biofuels and food security because they only want to sell oil. But anyway, we prepared a report, and I will not go into details, but if you go to my name, Biofuels, Food Security, and WikiLeaks, the story is there, because the major nation tried to ban this report because they wanted to continue to use corn for biofuel. And the conclusion of the report was that we should not grow first-generation biofuels, because if we grow that, food security will be affected. Land will be transferred from food to lucrative biofuels. And this means prices of food will go up. And in 2008, we had riots right across the world in the developing countries for food. Anyway, I left YASA in 2008 because of this WikiLeaks story, because YASA is an independent scientific institution in the world. It was created by Johnson and Kosygin in 1971 to bring Soviet Union and the West together to work on science, because we were in the midst of the Cold War. But anyway, on a matter of principle, I told the committee that I would not resign, but they needed to make a package that allowed me to go with dignity, and they published an apology in the newspapers. But this was in Austria, not globally. So I go away, I go home for 3 weeks, and the Emir of Qatar calls and he said, we need your help to do the food security of the GCC countries. So I spent 3 years there. And we founded the Global Dryland Alliance, because there are 1/3 of the world is dry land. They cannot produce anymore. 1/3 of the land in India has become dry, and we need to rejuvenate that. So finally, in 2012, I bought Zen Resort in 2004, and I came twice a year to visit to see if my bed was still there. But I had very good staff, and the staff are still with me from that moment. So we have had staff for 14 years at Zen Resort. I have 12 therapists. Not a single therapist has left. And they can get a job with 5 times the salary not only in Bali, but anywhere in the world. But no, these are amazing people in North Bali. I had the honor to attend all the world summits. 1972, I was in Stockholm at the first conference on environment and development, which was Mrs. Brundtland at the time. And in Stockholm, the argument was, first of all, they invited East Germany to go to the meeting. At that time, West and East were separate. And there were objections from both the CMA bloc and the West. So the conference was about to fail. Then the African countries, the developing countries, the group of 77, which is all the developing countries, was headed by Indira Gandhi of India. They announced that we don't want to come to this conference because our problem is development. Your problem is environment, because the West had developed over 50 years on coal-based pollution and everything else. So the conference was about to fail, and Maurice Strong was the chairman of that conference. He went to India to make a meeting with Mrs. Gandhi, and he asked Mrs. Gandhi, well, he had the meeting, Mrs. Gandhi is sitting there, he's sitting here, an interpreter or a note-taker secretary is there, and Maurice, she said little nice words to each other, and finally, what can I do for you, Maurice? And Maurice said, Prime Minister, I would like you to open the Stockholm conference. In this moment, Mrs. Gandhi closed her eyes. It took 8 minutes before she opened her eyes. Now, Maurice Strong had spent a lot of time with the Inuit people in northern Canada, and he knew the principle that when you ask a question, if the other person has heard the question, do not disturb them. Let them think it through. So after 8 minutes, Mrs. Gandhi opened her eyes and she said, I will come. That's why Stockholm took place. And that's the honor for Stockholm as having been the world's first sustainability summit, although it was only called Conference of Environment and Development. The second conference was Rio in '92. It was attended by 163 presidents, prime ministers, and kings. I remember at that conference, President Bush, his opening words to the conference were, the American way of life is not negotiable. This was followed 43 speeches after by Fidel Castro, who speaks in Spanish like a commander. In those days, they could still smoke in the United Nations. And his words were, the industrial countries of this world, have an ecological debt to pay to Mother Nature. He coined the words ecological debt. That is from Castro. At the same time, in June, in the middle of the conference, a 13-year-old girl from Canada, together with 3 other girls, they worked in restaurants in Canada, raised the money to fly to Brazil. And she made a speech. And I asked, please go to YouTube and listen to this speech. This is a 13-year-old girl. And her plea to this world was for sustainability, for sustainable development in all aspects. This was followed, of course, in 2019 by Greta, who has also aroused the world. So it took a 13-year-old in '92 and a 15-year-old in 2019, 2 little girls, to put the world on notice that we need to do something. In fact, I did a little analysis of the last 100 years. 92 was this young lady, 2019 was Greta, and then there are 2 leaders, women leaders in this world, who have had the courage to speak up about action. So you have humane action, H-U-M-A-N-E, humane action by Angela Merkel, who took that step to open the borders to Syria. At that time, they said this is political suicide. But she did the right thing, because there were women and children drowning in the Mediterranean in front of the cameras, and nobody said anything. So that was, she also deserves a place in history. And then is Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, for this bombing in the mosque. She stood up and was asked by journalists and others, what do you think of the Muslim population here? And she said, Muslim population? What Muslim population? We have no Muslim population here. We are all only New Zealanders. These were remarkable, courageous, and it's for fairer gender. 2 little girls and 2 women in these 50 years, if it's not in these 100 years, who have shown the way. And nobody, not a single leader in this world, said one word. When a mother was separated from a 3-year-old child, the 3-year-old child was made a ward of the state, was sent to a prison hospital, and that child died. No leader, no person has written in the newspaper about saying what the hell is going on in our world. So this is what we have come down to. So after the summit in Rio, the next summit was in Johannesburg in 2002, where we presented our climate change study. At the Johannesburg summit, the idea was that the private sector, business generates the money in the economy. The taxes go to the government. So government revenues come from business, and government revenue come from taxes on people who work in business. So the source is business of government revenues. So we felt private sector. Well, at that meeting, 550 public-private partnerships for sustainable development were put forward. Out of 550, 3 years later in 2005, 4 survived. Everything else died. So it's against this background that I want to say what is wrong with this world. Why are we not making this world sustainable? For the simple reason, I was sitting in Nusa Dua in 2001, preparing for Johannesburg, and I was lying there on the beach with my son, my 12-year-old son. And, you know, Bali is the island of the gods. I really believe that, because an angel from the ocean, I didn't see her, but her voice came. And her voice told me, the world can never be sustainable. I said, what the hell, the world can, I just spent 35 years working on making the world sustainable. And the voice, I didn't answer me. I asked why. And then it hit me just there within a minute that the world cannot be sustainable because human beings are not sustainable. We are not sustainable, and how can we make this world sustainable where we are in the driving seat? The 30 million other species have no voice. It's us, the chosen species. I don't know chosen by whom. But anyway, human beings are not sustainable. Why are human beings not sustainable? Take food. Food is the most important need. We don't know. The food we need is not there anymore. It's contaminated. Number one. The market is pushing foods that we should not be eating. All this junk food. We don't even know how to eat. It's a come on. What are you talking about? We don't know how to eat. You put it in your mouth and eat it. Well, you are grabbing a sandwich in your office or on the run. Whereas in the old days, we sat with the family and you chewed the food and the saliva flew and the digestion was much better. So we don't know how to eat. So our food is a big problem. Exercise. To balance the food you take or don't take, you need exercise. Exercise for most people means sweating. If you are not sweating, you're not exercising. Even in yoga, we're doing yoga to sweat. Hot yoga, Ashtanga yoga. You have to sweat, and do extreme asanas. In reality, the word yoga means yug, Y-U-G, which means consciousness. And we have forgotten consciousness. We need to, you know, when I do this, or if I even move my eyes, you need to coordinate every movement with your breath in yoga. And often we are not taught this. So exercise must be physical, mental, and spiritual balanced. And that's only then effective. Thirdly, you have stress at home. The plumber didn't come, your son didn't get into the right school, the husband is being difficult, there is stress in the home. The chicken got burnt, what shall I do? You have stress in the office. It's a culture of I win, you lose. That's the culture we live in. So this, and you live in an ever more polluted world. This is the cocktail of modern lifestyles. This is what we are living, and modern lifestyles is resulting in obesity and diabetes, blood pressure and heart disease, mental stress and depression. For none of these diseases there is a cure. Modern medicine has no solution. And if tomorrow a scientist found a cure for diabetes, that person will not live more than 2 weeks, because the pharmaceutical lobby, the political lobby, and anybody else will eliminate. So this is the reality. This is the world where over the years we have seen what the transformation has been. And when you look at the result of obesity, look at these countless diseases that come directly from modern lifestyles. And for most of them, they are debilitating. And the budgets that you need, most countries do not have healthcare budgets only to pay for diabetes, to pay for mental stress, and to pay for heart disease. And you can imagine that 29–30% of, in many countries, of children are obese and suffering initial symptoms of diabetes. So it's against this background, when you look at the leading causes of deaths, cardiovascular, that's air pollution, cancers, which is a mix of things, respiratory, so the first three, or the first and the third, but then diabetes, dementia, diarrheal diseases, liver disease, these are all a result. When you take insulin and tablets for diabetes, in 20 years your kidney goes and your liver goes. We need global partnerships. Why we need global partnerships? Because the only way forward for us is to combine traditional knowledge and modern medicine, so that we can prepare the solution to these problems of diabetes and all the diseases we face. Is how can we combine traditional knowledge and modern medicine and come up with preventive, curative, and restorative healthcare. In the two major schools of traditional medicine is Ayurveda, Yoga, Meditation of India, TCM, traditional Chinese medicine from China, and then every village, every house in this world has knowledge of what to do when you have a headache or you have a stomachache. This knowledge is in our grandmas. The knowledge of the grandmas of this world have not been collected, and every grandma that dies, the knowledge goes with her. We are sitting by the telephone with the mobile phone. The young people are sitting watching TV, and the grandma cannot even see, but she sits there 4 hours in front of the TV because nobody says anything. You can imagine if somebody went and held her hand, a young person, and squeezed it, and grandma, tell me, what did you do when you had a headache? Can you imagine her pride to share her knowledge? And I wrote to Google that, why don't you help us do a global campaign and ask all the young people to sit with their grandmas and record or write what is the secrets of grandma's knowledge. It hasn't happened. So this means when I decided that, when I heard that the world cannot be sustainable unless human beings are sustainable, then I said, what can I do about this? And the idea came that people who live modern lifestyles are stressed out. They have 4 weeks of holiday. When they go on holiday, like the old days, they cannot go and get drunk to go to a discotheque and parties. That's not what they need. They need to go to a place where somebody looks at their health and says, why don't you do these simple things that will help you make the transformation, where they can eat good food, where they can meditate, yoga. So I wanted to develop a resort where I could combine traditional and modern medicine. And I'm Indian, so I said, I go to India. That's the home of Ayurveda. Well, I visited 64 clinics and resorts in India. I didn't find one. And I was looking for a resort where the first thing I wanted when I entered, and every step when I took a massage or they served me a meal or anything, I wanted only two words: compassion and love. Because people who live modern lifestyles need compassion and love. Compassion means you walk into a restaurant and the waiter from the other side of the restaurant shouts, "Oh, Susanna, we haven't seen you for a long time." And everybody turns around to say, "Who the hell is this Susanna?" And Susanna has that feeling of being recognized. And you know, that's our human nature. We need this. So compassion and love were important. So India was out, was not possible. And then I looked at Hawaii, but Hawaii was already becoming very much Americanized. And finally I came to Bali, and I chose Bali. And there are many problems. You see what's going on in the south, what's happening even here in Ubud with traffic and everything. The north of Bali is still pristine. The north of Bali, but I think this is true of all Balinese. It's not only in the north. The Balinese have a culture of Banjar and how they take care of each other, etc., etc. And I have yet to read a book that highlights from a Western perspective what does the Balinese have that makes it so unique. You can read Eat, Pray and Love, it doesn't get to the essence of it. This, when you analyze the real Balinese culture, this is the dream of every person in this world, to live that way. Perhaps with a little difference, that you want more education and you want more progress and you want to become more competitive. But there are risks. My staff tell me, a gardener tells me, when my son becomes a gardener, I tell him, stop. My son passed in physics, and I said, go on, study economics. He did economics. I said, go and study philosophy. Go and study politics. There's no end to it. And when you push your children to study and go in this competitive world, and there are children already committing suicide because of the pressure of the schools, and if that happens to your child, you would never push your child into this. We need to, our universities and colleges have become degree producers. We have forgotten the real reason for education, which was in the days of Chaucer. It was in support of the community. So against this background, I chose Bali, and I developed here a Zen resort. And the idea was how it has to be inclusive. If I make a resort in North Bali, I'm going to give employment. I employ 64 people. I have 30 rooms. But I provide indirect employment for 200 others in the area, the farmers and artisans. So I am contributing to that village. But that's not enough. I need to contribute to the region. That's what we call inclusive business. That any business must not only take care of the immediate employees, but it must create. And when you have a 5-star hotel, they don't even allow people to come and sell that little elephant. It's not allowed to enter the hotel. So we need to develop boutique hotels. And Bali, along the Sunset Road, you only see the big hotels. So in designing Zen Resort, we went through all the domains of wellness. I'll give you one example, detox. In most resorts and most community, detox means clean my stomach, clean my digestive system. You need detox of your body, you need detox of your mind, and you need detox of your soul. Why you need detox of your soul? Because when you've been on your computer or you've seen the television and you've seen that child drowning in front of the camera, you really have a problem with your soul. And mind is obvious, all the stories we have to read. So we went through this and created ideas to focus, and Zen Resort has been built on scientific basis, taking account of all these parameters. So, well, inclusive business and inclusive in sustainability. Sustainability is not only put solar panels or recycle your grey water. It has to go beyond that to help the community around you become sustainable, help the farmers to choose their seeds, give them advice. And there are so many guests who come to this resort who want to give 3 days of their time to help the local community. So it's beautiful what happens there. So this is just to summarize what I just said. So just a little photo study of Zen Resort. It's designed with traditional buildings. We do authentic Ayurveda always with 2 therapists. It's probably the best resort in terms of being authentic in Asia. You have Ayurveda resorts all over, but it has to find really authentic. And our staff has been trained by American doctors, Spanish doctors, and Indian doctors in Ayurveda. And there are 12 therapists. Yoga we do, that's our very famous meditation sanctuary, which probably is totally unique in the world. It overlooks 270 degrees the ocean. There are no buildings on the beach because the village doesn't allow. On the beach there is rice and vineyards side by side. You can go to Cambodia, Vietnam, you will find the same scene with rice, but no vineyards. You can go to Europe, you'll find vineyards in Cannes with the same view, but nowhere you will find the two. And between the rice fields and the vineyards and us, we have a natural forest which we bought, and we only keep it for the birds, bees, and butterflies. So it is a wonderful look, and the sun rises to the east. So this is where we do very special exercises. This is the location. Now I just want to show you that if you make a resort, you need to be unique. And these are elements that I will probably not go into all that, but I will ask you just one. I'm sure a lot of you have done a fire ceremony. Am I correct? Okay. A fire ceremony is write on a piece of paper all the things you don't wish to have in your life, and you burn this paper, sending it to ashes. It's a ritual. But if you have trouble with your partner, you don't put his name and say, burn this fellow. No, you say, please God, or please someone, help him change. That's what a fire ceremony is. Does anybody know what's a flower ceremony? Or what's a flower and fire ceremony in tandem? Well, we're the only resort, as far as I know, that has come up with the new concept of flower and fire ceremony. The concept comes because if you're on the ocean, you have a storm. After the storm, you have tranquility. And then more storms and more tranquility. The story of life is sadness and happiness. That's what human beings are. So from that logic came the idea that we make a flower and fire ceremony. You take a piece of paper, 2 pieces of paper, you write down on this paper all the people who have made you the person you are. Your kindergarten teacher, your best friend when you were 5, your pet dog, your pet cat, your pet parrot, your grandma, grandfather, you write their names down. There's no order here. You write as you remember. Most people end up with 45 to 60 names. We give you 45 to 60 Japun flowers, the tree of life white flower. We give you 60 flowers, you sit in the grass with this basket full of flowers, your list on your side, you read the first name, you pick up one flower, you close your eyes, you go back in time and pay homage to that person. And you drop the flower without looking where it drops. And then the second flower. At the end, there's a bundle of flowers. You don't know which flower belongs to whom anymore. Now you can make a heart or a circle or a butterfly. And this is homage. It's extremely emotional because you have never done this for a spectrum of people in your life. You do it to your dad or grandma or brother all the time. But to do this, it's liberating. It's really, and after that you do the fire ceremony. So that's one example. The second example I can tell you is Zen-Tsu. Zen-Tsu is something we do in the pool, and this is to send you back in the womb of your mom to give you 25 minutes of the most relaxing time of your whole life, being back in the womb. There is a small possibility of 10% you will have a rebirth, and you will see your passage out of the womb from unconscious memory. So that's also an example. Zen Theta mantra. This is one of the most effective things, and to this day, some people in India have copied us now, but not exactly what we do. When you enter our spa, the first thing is you sit down on a stool and they massage your feet and wash your feet. After that, you enter the spa, which is designed like an Indian and a Balinese temple. You sit down on the bed with your legs dangling. A therapist stands in front of you. 3 therapists are behind you. You're told to close your eyes and they sing a mantra in Sanskrit for 5 minutes. Most people become totally unconscious. It's like a Buddhist temple with this sound going around you. And that's when your hand becomes like this. And when the therapist touches this, knows what's going on here. Then you cannot. So Zen mantra is most effective that when the 2 therapists start working on your body with compassion and love, they move the lymphatic fluid out of you. And the lymphatic fluid sends out most of your toxins, over 50%. The other source of toxin is your lungs. So even in lungs, we have developed what we call Zen Qi. This is at sunrise meditation. Now, when you go to our resort and go to sunrise meditation for 45 minutes, and you expect to sit down and meditate in front of that beautiful panorama you had. No. You spend the first 15 minutes exercising, yoga, starting with your head, then your eyes, then your ears, neck, and you work all the way to the ankles. This, starting with your brain going down, it speeds up as you go to your feet. And this enhances your blood flow. The river of blood is now flowing fast. The next 15 minutes is pure pranayama breathing, bringing maximum oxygen in and toxins out. And the last 15 minutes is meditation, silence. And the last 5 minutes is thankfulness for the soul. So this sequence is detoxing mind as well as your body, your system. So all of these are, you find a lot of descriptions of this on our website. We are the first one to develop Zen Harmony Diving, which combines diving with breathing, Ayurveda, yoga, and meditation. Then you become a better driver, and you have, instead of 35 minutes with the tank, you probably have 50 minutes. And those 15 minutes are very important because the best things you see when you're about to go up, when the tank is empty. So it's a very effective way. Sound healing, some of you have been. If you haven't, you should go, and we are building a big pyramid in our new project in Ubud. This is the effect, because this is the quantum vibrations. This is at the pyramid of Qi. We are developing now this concept of pyramids. We want sound, we want visuals, we want aroma, and we want touch. Because beyond what we are doing in Zen Resort, you need these quantum vibrations. We are working with Thomas and a man called Don. He's in Vienna. He's a musician. Thomas is doing the visuals. And also our team is working with him. So this is an area that we are going to move forward on. So finally, I want to come to the section. Please excuse the time, because I need all of you. I need all of you to work with me. Because what's going on in our world, we can be thankful to Greta, to Severin, to Ardan, to Angela Merkel. But what is going on in our world? The politicians, those people in power, have only one aim in life: to be re-elected. Every time they want the position, re-election. So that's why they hardly ever rock the boat, especially election time. So the aim of politicians is re-election. The aim of business, they can be conscious and they can talk of corporate responsibility and environmental responsibility. The bottom line is a CEO has number one goal: shareholder profits. If he doesn't meet the targets, he's out. So business does little steps, but not the big step they need to take. The scientists of this world present their beautiful scientific work, but they never tell you the impact of this work, because that's speculation, that's not science. And plus the fact that scientists are not allowed by their funders, the private and public sector, to give implications out from their heart. So don't expect the scientist also. You can interpret and over time see the result having that impact. The civil society, the adults of this world, have one goal: to earn a livelihood for their family. You work in a coal mine, you're not going to stand outside the coal mine and say, no more coal. You lose your job. So all the adults of this world are maintaining the status quo, their self-interest. It's too late already in many areas. We know that. In climate change, the damage is already coming, no matter what we do. The only people who will pay the price are the people, are the children of the adults. The adults give birth to a child with a prayer that I hope you will have a better future than I had. And yet, we have reached a point now in 2020 and not too far away, no more than 2050, when we will realize as adults that we sacrificed our current generation and the next generation and generations beyond. They will not survive. So the only people who can change are the youths and the young adults who are already in the ladder of employment. This is the only group that can make a difference. So how do we mobilize the youths? Well, we have 2 little girls doing it, but they don't quite have the education. We need to mobilize the youths and young adults in colleges, universities, to make this difference. Because if they don't make this difference in the next 50, 60 years of their life, it's too late. So how do we mobilize the youths? The Earth Odyssey program that we are working on is to make this happen. So I'm working with a Brazilian famous marine film producer for the last 20 years. He just was on a Phoenician ship sailing from Tunis to America and then going south. So he's a partner in this Earth Odyssey project, which is over the next 3 years. We want to hold panel discussions. But first part of our idea is to make a robust social media campaign. We are going to ask people to use their phones to send these clips of the sustainability problems they face in their villages and in their streets, and what actions they envisage. We're going to make a global campaign to collect such clips. And these clips will form the basis of panel discussions all around the world. We want to invite 2 scientists, 2 politicians, 2 civil society, and 2 politicians, 2 scientists, 2 business, and 2 civil society, 8 adults. And we want 12 to 14 youths and young adults. But the youth and the young adults in Australia will need to be 20% Aborigine, 15% new migrants, and the rest are Australian. You must capture the diversity. And this group will watch a film on climate action. We will collect whatever best material we can find internationally. From that, we will make a summary document, and they will watch this document and discuss actions. Whether you are a prime minister, as a politician, or a Nobel laureate, everyone will have 6 minutes to make their case for action. This will be recorded. We want to do it in university settings. Why? Because the universities have video making system. So they will hopefully give us free access to their video. But more important, it's time to take the universities back to why they were formed. Today, universities are simply degree vocation producers. And we need to go back to the days of Chaucer, where universities were there for community, for the problems of society. So if we start this panel discussion, and Oxford has already agreed, Harvard has already agreed with us to do this, and Qatar, with 24 international universities, we're talking to them now. If we can do this, it might trigger a catalyst for universities to go back to why they were created instead of degree producer, because we need the school of life. Out of all this, we will produce a science series, and we will produce a TV document, an IMAX documentary on actions for sustainability right across all the field, including climate. Thank you. So if earthodyssey.org, that's our website, and we plan to have a panel discussion in Bali, because there are a lot of people like you already living here. It's an international crowd, and I'm sure we can pluck 6 people from the streets to be partners in a panel discussion. So we plan to do one here, certainly. And we will do one in Stockholm, because the first World Summit was in Stockholm. Stockholm, Johannesburg, and Brazil all had summits, so there will be centers. China, the BRICS countries, Brazil, China, Russia, India, will all be part of this. So thank you very much. I'm sorry it went on a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Manderson.
Please. Please.